Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. It is Tuesday, and we have another great show for you. First, the FBI unveils some eerie surveillance footage in the urgent search for Nancy Guthrie. Jury selection commences in the Utah murder case of Corey Richens. The daughter of a Minnesota gubernatorial candidate fatally stabbed. Some shocking descent into violence, the whole meth and mental health. We've got this day in legal history, our quote of the day, and our dumb criminal. Let's talk about it.
All right, lawyer.
Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do, leave me a comment below. Make sure you hit that little bell, and also you can listen to us anytime on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Now, before we get to the docket, let me remind you of a couple of things. I told you once that not long ago, we were stepping up our merch game, okay? Stepping it up. Not saying anything, we've stepped it up. So go check the link below for all the new merch. And there's some stuff in there. If you order now, it'll arrive by Valentine's Day. You know what I'm saying. Go check it out. Also, let me remind you, go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up today, get that background subscription service. When you do, you'll be able to do about as many background searches as you desire on anyone here in the United States. You type in the name, you're asked some questions. A report is literally generated while you wait. It is emailed to you, and you can even get updates in the future when stuff comes. You don't have to do anything. It just automatically does it. And you're going to get information about email addresses, phone numbers. You're going to find out their social media presence. Are they married, divorced? Do they have liens, judgment? Do they own property? Do they have a criminal history, for goodness sakes? The things that you want to know about people coming into your life, ladies and gentlemen. And you don't want to find out after something bad happens and say, I should have known. Yes, go now. It could potentially save your life. crimetalksearch.com. You're going to be happy that you did. All right, let's go ahead and open the record for Tuesday, February 10th, 2026. And first on the docket, that's right, the FBI has unveiled some eerie surveillance footage in the search for Nancy Guthrie. So as the investigation into the disappearance of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie enters its 10th day, federal authorities have released some chilling surveillance images of a masked individual suspected in her abduction, intensifying efforts to locate the mother of the prominent NBC Today Show co-host Savannah Guthrie. The case, marked by a double ransom demand and mounting family desperation, continues to unfold amid extensive searches and public appeals for information. Now, Nancy Guthrie was last seen on the evening of January 31st when her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, dropped her off at her $1 million residence near East Skyline Drive and North Campbell Avenue in Tucson, following a family dinner with her daughter, Annie Guthrie. She failed to appear for a scheduled virtual church service in the following morning, prompting her friends to alert the family around 11:10 a.m. on February 1st. Police were notified shortly after noon that day. Physical evidence at the scene suggested some sort of foul play. DNA analysis confirmed that the blood droplets on the front porch belonged to Guthrie. Her doorbell camera was disconnected around 1:45 a.m., and her pacemaker ceased transmitting data at approximately 2:28 a.m. Now, her phone, wallet, medication, and vehicle remained at the house, obviously heightening concerns for her well-being, given her reliance on her daily medication. A history of high blood pressure and heart conditions requiring the pacemaker. Now, described as mentally sharp but with limited mobility, Guthrie's health vulnerabilities have amplified the urgency of the search. Now, so here's what we know since the week that she's been gone. A ransom demand of $6 million in Bitcoin emerged shortly after her disappearance. That was communicated via notes sent to multiple media outlets, including a local television station as well as TMZ. Now, the demands included an initial deadline of February 6th, extended to 5 p.m. on February 9th or 10th, with threats of harm if their demands were unmet. Despite Savannah Guthrie's public statement expressing willingness to pay for her mother's safe return, no payment has yet been made, and the deadline passed without consequences or proof of life. Now, the FBI has indicated that no ongoing communications between the family and any suspected kidnappers has led investigators to question whether the ransom was in fact a hoax. So the Pima County Police Department, in collaboration with the FBI, are spearheading this probe. And now there is a 24-hour command post that has been established, bolstered by additional personnel from FBI field offices nationwide, crisis management experts, and analytical support. Now, searches have extended to multiple locations, including an underground septic tank near Guthrie's home and her daughter Annie's residence approximately 4 miles away. Digital devices have been seized for forensic examination, and missing person billboards featuring Guthrie's details have been deployed in major cities across Arizona, California, New Mexico, Texas, and beyond. There is a $50,000 reward that is being offered for information leading to her recovery. Like I said, now in a significant development today, FBI Director Kash Patel released surveillance photos and videos recovered from back-end systems depicting an armed, masked figure wearing gloves and a black pack tampering with the front door at Guthrie's residence. This marks the first public identification of a potential suspect, though no arrests have been made and no vehicle or additional persons of interest have been linked to this case. So the remote, dimly lit terrain surrounding the property has been cited as a challenge in gathering witness accounts. The Guthrie family has issued emotional pleas through social media, and Savannah Guthrie's, absent from her broadcasting duty, has shared multiple videos urging the public to assist, stating in her latest post that the family remains at an hour of desperation, but believes her mother is still alive. Now, their pastor has described Nancy as a resilient and loving individual, emphasizing hope amid uncertainty. And as of today, the investigation remains unresolved, and police are appealing for tips to the FBI at their hotline, 1-800-CALL-FBI. Obviously, there's a lot of complexities with this particular case, but when you look at this video, and we will take a look at it tonight when we go live at 6 p.m. Mountain Time in much greater detail. It's not lengthy, but the man, it comes up. He has a ski mask over his head. It appears as though he has a mustache. He has some sort of plastic or latex gloves on his hand, but he has a backpack that's going to be identifiable to somebody saying, hey, I remember that backpack. I remember somebody wearing that backpack. That outfit, the shirt, the pants, it's going to help lead people to this suspect or potential person of interest, I guess you could say. And you think the person thought they were being pretty savvy and sophisticated, right? They kept their identity disguised. They had gloves on so they hopefully wouldn't transfer any DNA, leave any oils or anything like that from their skin, from anything that they touched. But there's going to be something that's going to give this guy away. We'll talk about it more tonight. Join us live, 6 p.m. Mountain Time for our Tuesday night live. Next on the docket, jury selection commences in the murder case of, that mother accused of poisoning her husband with fentanyl. Yeah, that's right, Corey Richins. So jury selection has begun in the Summit County, Utah trial of Corey Richins, the 35-year-old former realtor and mother of 3, charged with aggravated murder and attempted aggravated murder in the death of her husband, Eric Richins. Now, prosecutors allege that Richins administered a fatal amount of illicit fentanyl to her 39-year-old husband on March 4th, 2022, resulting in his death from intoxication with blood levels approximately 5 times the lethal threshold. Corey Richins' murder trial has been reset, and it's going to extend into 5 weeks. Now, the murder trial, like I said, is going to be set for 5 weeks. I don't understand how this murder trial could take 5 weeks. This is a 7-8 day murder trial where I come from, okay? Murder trials are not usually that complicated. Now, this case does stem from an investigation initiated after Eric Richins was found deceased in the couple's bedroom in their home in Utah. Police claim that Richins had a financial motive as her real estate business faced debts exceeding $1.8 million, while her husband's estate was valued about $5 million. And then in January of 2022, she reportedly secured a life insurance policy on his life under allegedly fraudulent circumstances. Now, prosecutors further assert that Richins attempted to poison her husband on February 14th back in 2022, Valentine's Day, by lacing a sandwich with fentanyl, an incident he ultimately survived, but which left him ill. The following day, she sent a text message to an alleged paramour stating, quote, "If he could just go away, life would be so perfect," end quote. And then on March 4th of 2022, she allegedly spiked his cocktail with fentanyl, leading ultimately to his death. So Richins was arrested back in May of 2023 and has remained in the Summit County Jail since her arrest. She has pled not guilty to the charges. Notably, following her husband's death, Richins self-published a children's book on coping with grief, which she promoted in media appearances, describing the death as so unexpected. And then in May of 2024, audio recordings, she maintained her innocence, stating, quote, "What I really didn't do is murder my husband," end quote. In a separate case, Richins faces over 24 charges related to mortgage fraud, money laundering, and issuing bad checks from 2021, though she has not yet entered a plea on that particular case. That case is obviously trailing the homicide case, because if she goes down on murder, guess what? All that stuff is completely irrelevant and usually will get resolved rather quickly. Like I said, so jury selection is expected to span over 2 weeks, with opening statements scheduled for February 23rd, and the trial projected to last up to 5 weeks before Judge Richard Mazik. Now, the defense recently sought a venue change, citing extensive local publicity, potentially biasing the jury pool, but the request was denied. Media access to jury selection was granted following a motion by local TV outlets. And like I said, if convicted on the first-degree felony murder charge, Richins could face life imprisonment. The trial was originally delayed from the original 2025 start, and obviously has a lot of attention going on as it relates to the element of the alleged financial desperation and family betrayal. It's going to be an interesting one, and we'll be bringing it to you live, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, we don't get to see the jurors, but the reality of it is that that's the most important part of any trial, because if you don't have a good jury, somebody's going to have a bad day when the verdict comes down. Next on the docket, the daughter of a Minnesota gubernatorial candidate stabbed to death. So in a devastating event that has shaken the political and local communities in Minnesota, Hallie Marie Tobler, who is 22, was discovered deceased from multiple stab wounds in her St. Cloud apartment on the evening of February 8th. Police arrived at the scene around 8:20 p.m. after reports of the incident, finding the apartment securely locked from within. Her husband, Dylan Tobler, who's 23, was also present, suffering from severe injuries that investigators believe were self-inflicted. Police have identified Dylan Tobler as the individual responsible for Hallie's injuries and subsequent death. Now, the investigation is being conducted by local law enforcement with support from the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. And as of the following day, Dylan Tobler remained in stable condition at the St. Cloud Hospital while under police custody, with formal charges anticipated pending at the completion of the inquiry. No additional suspects have been mentioned, and details regarding the events leading up to the stabbing remain under review. Now, Hallie Tobler was the daughter of Jeff Johnson, a prominent figure in Minnesota politics who previously served on the St. Cloud City Council and was actively campaigning as a Republican candidate for governor. Johnson's gubernatorial bid emphasized issues such as combating fraud, addressing crime rates, and bolstering the state's economy. In the wake of this profound loss, he announced the suspension of his campaign, citing the need to prioritize his family's well-being during this period of immense grief. Now, the Republican primary had been competitive, featuring notable contenders including MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell and retired MMA fighter Brad Kohler, with Johnson receiving under 1% of the vote in the recent state caucus. Now, this tragedy, obviously, there's been lots of expressions of sympathy from across the political spectrum. The Republican Party of Minnesota issued a statement conveying deep sorrow, noting that the loss of a child is completely unimaginable and extending thoughts and prayers to the family. The Minnesota House Speaker, Lisa DeMuth, described the situation as unspeakable tragedies, emphasizing her inability to fathom the family's devastation as a parent herself. Fellow Republican candidate Peggy Bennett echoed these sentiments, stating her heartbreak for Johnson and his loved ones. And even from the opposing party, Democrat Senator Amy Klobuchar offered prayers for those mourning Halley's, acknowledging the unimaginable difficult time. We'll follow that one, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, it's probably not a whodunit. It looks like the husband did it. And then he tried to inflict some wounds on himself with a knife. Always a tough way to go. Next, the descent into violence, meth and mental illness. So obviously, as you know, director Rob Reiner and his spouse, they were in a incident that obviously captivated public attention and raised profound questions about the intersection of substance abuse and untreated mental health disorders. Now, Nicholas Reiner stands accused of the brutal killing of his parents, acclaimed filmmaker Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Reiner. The tragedy unfolded in their upscale Brentwood residence back in Los Angeles during December of 2025, transforming a family home into a scene of an unimaginable horror that has prompted experts to examine the underlying cause of such familial violence. So police discovered the bodies amid what investigators described as a landscape of extreme devastation, with evidence pointing to a frenzied attack that exceeded typical patterns observed in domestic disputes. Nicholas Reiner, who has a documented history of schizoaffective disorder, was apprehended shortly thereafter in the vicinity of Exposition Park, a location notorious for prevalence of illicit drug activities, particularly methamphetamine distribution. Now, this arrest site has fueled speculation regarding the role of narcotics in exacerbating his condition, leading to a reevaluation of the case beyond initial assumptions of solely psychiatric origins. Expert analysis has highlighted the potential influence of methamphetamine as a catalyst in this calamity. And addiction specialist Dr. Drew Pinsky, during a discussion on a podcast, articulated that the nature of the violence exhibited hallmarks of a stimulant-induced psychosis distinct from symptoms arising purely from schizophrenia or related disorders. He emphasized that the potent form of methamphetamine circulated in Los Angeles can intensify psychological vulnerabilities, creating a volatile state where rational thought disintegrates into chaotic aggression. Now, Dr. Pinsky noted that combining such substances with an underlying mental health condition like schizoaffective disorder forms a perilous combination, potentially transforming manageable symptoms into catastrophic outcomes. Now, prior to this incident, Nicholas Reiner had been managing his disorder through prescribed medications. However, he reportedly ceased treatment approximately 1 month earlier, citing concerns over side effects and weight gain. Despite subsequent adjustments to the regimen by medical professionals, his mental state deteriorated rapidly, culminating in the alleged murders. Now, observers familiar with the case have described his post-arrest demeanor in custody as regressed and detached, resembling a state of profound disassociation that complicates assessments of his comprehension and ultimate culpability. So, obviously, this whole situation, and we don't know for sure, but if there was in fact methamphetamine, it underscores the dangers of meth and its grip on vulnerable individuals, but also invites a little broader inquiry into why adult offspring might perpetrate violence against their parents. Psychological and sociological perspectives suggest contributing factors such as unresolved familial conflicts, financial dependencies, or the amplifications of grievances through substance-induced paranoia. In regions like Detroit, for example, similar incidents have historically prompted community discussions on preventive measures, including enhanced access to integrated mental health and addiction services to avert such tragedies. Now, as the legal proceedings advance, this event serves as a stark reminder of the need for comprehensive support systems that address both psychiatric care and substance abuse prevention. Obviously, the Reiner's family loss has resonated widely, prompting calls for increased discussion indeed. So let's talk about this, ladies and gentlemen, just briefly. I've told you this before. A large percentage of my clientele has mental health issues. I think we probably have 3 people right now where competency is a huge issue. And what is the common thread? Well, they won't take their medications. But they start feeling better because, well, they've been taking their medications. So then they think they don't need to take their medications. But the reason they feel okay is because they're taking their medications. They think they need to stop. And then, of course, it spirals. And then maybe they can't get their medication. And then they want to self-medicate. And we just spiral from there. And these type of drug-induced psychosis, it's a real thing. You don't hear about it because everybody wants to say, well, it was a psychotic episode. Well, guess what? If it was drug-induced, you can't go NGRI, okay? Not guilty by reason of insanity. And I've seen more and more of this over the years. Had a homicide where, they had been drinking all day and snorting Adderall. Client was convicted of killing his wife and next door neighbor with knives, very sharp objects. And there was a confession that he called 911 to. And we've had people that have been in marijuana-induced psychosis. Now, some people are like, oh, you can't get induced from marijuana. Oh, yes, you can. You smoke enough of it, right? Like I always remember everybody knew like there was the guy, the pothead that smoked pot every day. Yeah. I remember there was a guy case where literally he got his COVID money. They did nothing but sit around. They pooled all their money, bought pot, and literally smoked it until he got arrested for attacking a completely innocent person. But the paranoia was just so great, he thought he had to beat up the person on the train. So, do what you want. Like I said, I'm very libertarian. You do what you want. I just don't want to pay for it. And if you screw up, I don't want to pay for it either. Okay? So you want to do your drugs, you want to do your pop, that's great. Go do it. But when you break into a house or you beat up somebody, like I said, I don't want to have to pay for it. I don't want to pay for your rehab to go into it. Those are your choices. There's got to be your consequences. But it's a real thing, ladies and gentlemen. Next, this day in legal history, February 10th, 1855, Congress amended the U.S. citizenship laws to extend citizenship to all children born abroad to American parents, thereby clarifying the jus sanguinis principle in naturalization. On this date in 1964, the Civil Rights Act passes the United States House of Representatives, obviously marking a pivotal step forward, prohibiting discrimination based upon race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Now, we also know it went to the Senate, and it was filibustered by our former vice president's father, Al Gore's father, because they were opposed to it. Yes, remember that, ladies and gentlemen. The Democrat Party in the Senate filibustered the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And they didn't just get to say, oh, we're going to filibuster something. They actually had to get up and stand up there and talk until they couldn't talk anymore. Not like the silly rules that they have today. Next, February 10th, 1967, the 25th Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified, establishing procedures for presidential succession and addressing instances of presidential disability or vacancy in the vice presidency. So we oftentimes hear of the call for the 25th Amendment, who should take over if the president or the vice president becomes incapacitated. As you know, obviously there's been lots of cabinet meetings recently, but the 4 previous years, I think there was one previous meeting because who has to initiate the 25th Amendment? Oh, that's right, the cabinet. Think about that for a second. And next, our legal quote of the day. And since we're talking about people covering their faces with masks, identification. It's one of the pivotal points of any criminal case. They have to prove that it was the defendant, not somebody that looked like him, not someone using his identity or his clothing, but it was in fact him. So a seminal observation from the United States Supreme Court underscoring the critical role of accurate identification to prevent miscarriages of justice. The vagaries of eyewitness identification are well known. The annals of criminal law are rife with instances of mistaken identification. That was a United States v. Wade, a 1967 case that highlights how errors in identifying suspects can lead to wrongful convictions and obviously the need for rigorous safeguards in criminal proceedings. Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Go back and look at all the people that have been freed through the Innocence Project, usually through DNA evidence exonerating them. How did they get convicted? Faulty eyewitness identification. Happened a lot way back when. Do you see the man in the courtroom that did it? Yes, the man right over there with defendant on his table. They practically pointed him out for him. And people get convicted and it was the wrong guy. And then guess what? People, when they're wrong, they don't like to admit they're wrong. So they just say, no, I'm positive it was that person. And then it turns out, well, it wasn't. Something to think about, ladies and gentlemen. Eyewitness identification. Be careful of it. But remember, DNA is the ultimate identification tool these days in law enforcement. And then finally, our dumb criminal of the day. Let's go to Kingston, North Carolina. And in a bold display of entrepreneurial audacity that could only be described as a half-baked plan, a former Little Caesars worker in North Carolina transformed a routine burglary into an impromptu pizza enterprise until his recipe for success crumbled under the weight of the law. Please meet Jonathan Hackett, allegedly revisited his old workplace not once but twice over the weekend, treating the establishment as his personal domain. During his initial uninvited shift, Hackett reportedly whipped up several pizzas, served them to unsuspecting patrons, and slyly stashed the earnings in his own pocket, proving that old habits and perhaps secret sauce recipes die hard. Undeterred by his first foray, Hackett returned for an encore performance, this time attempting entry while current staff were on duty. What ensued was a less than harmonious team-building exercise and a little more chaotic, well, a scuffle, in fact, as employees valiantly barred his path. The altercation left Hackett requiring medical attention at the local hospital before police intervened, escorting him then to the jail. Facing a menu of serious charges, including felony breaking and entering, felony obtaining property by false pretenses, felony larceny following breaking and entering, and misdemeanor breaking and entering. Hackett's brief stint as a rogue restaurateur serves as a cautionary tale. In the world of fast food, crime doesn't pay, especially when the toppings include handcuffs. Local police have since restored order, ensuring that future pizzas at the Kingston Outpost remain legitimately hot and ready without the side of a felony conviction. All right, everybody, that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining us. Join us tonight, 6 p.m. Mountain Time for Tuesday Night Live. We'll see you then. And remember, the Constitution matters.